Hey everyone, welcome back to the NGA podcast. We're doing something a little different today. Instead of talking about what we're teaching other people and what we'd like to learn about gymnastics, we're going to talk about why we are still in gymnastics and what it has taught us over the time that we've been in it. So we're going to be asking each other questions and trying to dive deep in so you guys can get to know us a little bit better. Let's start with why we stayed in this world, because a lot of people, we grow up in gymnastics, we do gymnastics, but we don't have to choose for it to be our career. So doesn't matter who wants to start, but I kind of just fell into gymnastics, and I'll get into that at some point. But do any of you want to kind of start on why you decided to keep going in gymnastics instead of doing something else?
Yeah, well, for me, I almost stopped. So I went to grad school in Memphis and was coaching semi-full-time, as full-time as I could be while I was in grad school, where I met the Rebecca Grady. And then when I moved to Western Kentucky for my wife to finish up her schooling, I got my big boy PT job, and I was like, all right, I'm done with gymnastics. Like, Western Kentucky doesn't have a ton of like really competitive gymnastics, or at least it didn't back then. I don't know if it's changed now, but back then it was mainly like a kind of like a local league for the most part, that they would just kind of compete against each other, real small gyms. So I came from world of, like, I had just started a tops team, and we had level 10s that went to nationals, and all this stuff was like, yeah, okay. I don't know that my mindset could switch down to this. I was like, well, I've got my big boy PT job. I'll find some hobbies, and I kind of got away from gymnastics for about 3 years, and then I came back down to Middle Tennessee, where I grew up at, and started up a PT clinic, PT practice. And I had a business coach that we had hired, and we were talking, and he was kind of getting to know us, and he knew about he figured out my history of gymnastics and all that I've done and all that stuff. And he said, all right, well, so is like the gymnastics world in need of, some injury prevention PT help? And I was like, well, yeah. He's like, are there a ton of people that are trying to help in that sphere? Well, as far as I can tell, there's like one or two, right? And he's like, so why aren't you helping out the gymnastics world? I was like, all right, I'll do it. And as I jumped in and started meeting my kind of old friends again that I had grown up around, and the owners of gyms in the area that I'd grown up and all this, they were like, yeah, no, we desperately need some help with this stuff. And so that's how I kind of got back into it. And then I started coaching 1 hour a week, and the gym owner said she would never ask for anything more. They just needed 1 hour a week for a little help with their optionals. But I really enjoy coaching bars and beam, or not bars and beam, bars and
It's like
vault.
beam.
No, bars and vault. And I kind of, and bars was always the next event. And so after floor, I was like, well, if you guys ever need help on bars, you just let me know. And so it obviously just kind of kept building from there. And so now I've transitioned where I only see gymnasts for PT, and that gives me time to actually coach more now. So which is fun, but I almost got out and then got roped back in again. What about you, Rob? What's kept you in all these years?
I was just trying to think about exactly what it was that kept it in. But, one of the first things that kept me in all these years is that gymnastics is a year-round sport. I mean, yes, we have a competition season, but we don't really have like an off season. Like basketball has its winter sport, soccer, it's done in the fall, baseball, we started up in the spring and those kind of things. And I coached all those other sports as well, soccer and softball and basketball. And they didn't give me the same joy that gymnastics did in helping children to achieve such a long-term, from level 3 pre-K all the way up into trying to get to be a level 10. And I took a year off, not even quite a year, and I tried to step away because I was doing a bunch of different things. I was in bodybuilding, I was on their national staff, and going to all these events and traveling, and I was traveling for gymnastics, and I was teaching, so I had like that part of my career. And I used to work, back in auto parts, and I started coaching gymnastics then, even while I was in college. And I just really, the love and passion for the sport came to me because there was just a year-round thing, and we never had to take off. And that 1 year that I kind of took a little bit of a break, I felt like something was missing, and I needed to go back. And a friend of mine had gotten sick, and the owner of the gym asked me to help out while he was sick. So that brought me back into the gymnastics world. And then he passed away. And she's like, well, you can't quit now. You got to keep up with me because he's gone. I'm like, oh, okay. It was like 60 miles one way from my house. It was really, it was a far drive, and I was making it happen. And it kind of spiraled back into like, I just want to be done with everything Excel besides just doing gym. You can make a career out of being a gymnastics coach. And don't let anybody tell you that you can't. You definitely can. I don't own a gym. People think that I'm the owner. I'm just a general manager. But it's important to know that, when people say, well, my real job is what, I don't really like when people say that because, this is my real job. This is my career. And it's been my career for 37 years now. And I hate to admit that because it makes me seem, although in mind, I don't feel old. I feel like, an 18-year-old still. And then
Gymnastics keeps you young,
I look
It
in the
does.
mirror. Oh, what happened? But it's our motto here at Ariel's, and I'm not sure who actually came up with it, if it was Rick or myself or between the two of us, but I don't love gymnastics. I love teaching children who love doing gymnastics. And
Mhm.
that's what keeps me in the sport.
And Rob,
Yeah,
you've no, go, Mike.
No, you had a question for Rob. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask him because Ian and I were kind of talking about it yesterday that you've kind of coached all over the place.
Yeah, I have. At some point, my first start of my career was at one particular gym that's no longer in existence. And back in the day, it was a really a prominent, high level gym. It was called Fagley's School of Gymnastics. Dave Fagley and his wife Kathy. And so he was a professor of sports psychology at the university, Rutgers University. And so Dr. Dave. And that was where I got my start. And then I kind of really started getting into gymnastics when I met Rick Palumbo, who owned Team USA Gymnastics Camp, who owns Ariel's, that I run for him. That's where I met him. And the whole camp thing was like amazing to me, like I lived on property, we had a full-time job, even though camp was only 10 weeks out of the summer. And that really got me going, got my career boosted. That took me from there to Guatemala. And I coached the Guatemalan national team for a year and, went to the Pan Am Games with them and some other, big international things that we did together. It was great. It was some international experience. And then when I got back home, camps kind of were starting to crumble a little bit and the two owners were kind of parting ways. So I kind of got out of that and like, well, now I don't have a full-time job anymore. I had just finished college. What do I do now? So I started going into gyms for like a year or two to help them build their programs, raise the level of their gymnastics. And then somebody get wind of this club that was doing better and that I was there helping them. And hey, can you come to our gym? So I kind of bounced around at some gyms and doing that. And I found really great enjoyment in that because I'm sharing the knowledge that I spent all this time to learn to help others. And that was really big for me, kept me in the sport of just wanting to help others. And at the same time, while I'm helping others, I'm still learning from the people that you're helping. There's always something to pick up. And so I did that. And then I kind of settled back, maybe one or two clubs, bouncing back and forth between the two of them. And then I kind of got retired out from, teaching and just was done with all of that and decided, well, Rick said, why don't you just come out here and just take over all operations out here in Pennsylvania? I'm like, oh, I'm a Jersey boy. I can't move to Pennsylvania. I mean, like the Eagles, like no way and no can do. And here I am 10 years later out in PA, but I still got my Jersey license and I'm not changing my plates.
I love the commitment.
Watch the cop will be after me for that one.
Gosh. And
Yeah,
you can coach in like 17 languages or something, right?
No,
Isn't that what it is?
I can coach in like 4 or 5 different languages.
I know.
That's
He
awesome.
told me that and I was like, seriously?
Well,
That's
'cause
amazing.
when we were a recruit, I guess you'd call it recruiting for camp or, just going out and soliciting for camp. We would pick a different province in Canada. And so we'd go and spend a week up in Canada. We'd go to like Ottawa, we'd go to Hull, we'd go to Quebec, Montreal, Toronto. And a lot of them are some French speaking areas. So we had to pick up at least how to coach gymnastics in French. I can't really speak much of, my name is and, where's the pool and, something like that. Where's the bathroom? But I could
Right.
coach, I could get by in gymnastics with enough French gymnastics terminology and a little bit in Russian. Spanish is easy, yeah. So that's about it.
That's cool.
That's awesome, Rob. Just so you know, I don't speak any foreign languages, but I think gymnastics is kind of a universal language.
There you
I've
go.
been to lots of different countries. And every time you walk in the gym, basically there's sign language. If you can't speak it, the sign language, you can show them the positions and what they need to be doing and all of those things. So it is interesting. So yeah, my background is, started back kind of in the prehistoric ages and kind of grew from there.
Back when Jesus was just a little baby.
Yeah, well, we invented fire. We invented fire. It was like that long ago. And no, I played football. I played all sports kind of in elementary school. And we got to high school and there was this gymnastics gym, which was really cool. But I was not going to do gymnastics. I was playing football. But I realized very soon I was a little bit too small for football. But every day after practice, we had to walk by the gymnastics gym to get to the locker room and all of that. And I just kept looking in there. I'm like, man, those guys are having fun. That really looks enjoyable. I started kind of late. I started in high school, the love of the sport, just, doing it yourself because, I was definitely ADD and there was always an opportunity to learn something new when you went in the gym. And back then we had a coach, but the upper athletes kind of helped the younger, the seniors helped the freshmen in teaching skills and how to do things. So there's never a dull moment, really interesting. And I decided, I wanted to get into education. So, went to Arizona State and I competed for them. I got, good enough in 4 years of high school that I could compete at a collegiate level. And so I competed for Arizona State and got my degree in education. And my plan was to get a physical education job teaching PE at a high school where I could coach. That was my in because there's lots of men physical education teachers out there. It's hard to get a job unless you have a specialty. So that was my specialty, but my plan was flawed because they dropped the high school men's programs right about when I finished school. So
Perfect.
But I had been, perfect. Yeah. But I had been coaching at a private club all through college. And so really enjoyed it. And that's where I decided to, I couldn't do what my plan was. So my next thing was, I'm going to open up a gym, thinking that would be an easy thing to do.
Oh,
Wrong
yeah.
again.
Super easy.
Wrong again. Oh, but I love coaching gymnastics. And what I enjoy about it is that in education, I would have had an opportunity to work with that child or that athlete for maybe a year, coaching them physical education. And that would be my total input to what I could pass along and educate that student. But whereas in gymnastics, they come in at preschool and my goal is to, they don't leave the gym until they get married. And then when they have children, they have to bring their children back to the gym. So
That's right.
the connection is long term. So you build relationships. You're able to impart, hopefully some of your wisdom, but you're really able to help that student or that athlete through life and all the steps along the way because you have them. Hopefully you have them for a long period of time and you can really make an impact on their life. And like I talked about before, and Rob kind of touched on a little bit, is that, gymnastics, you're always learning. And so it's never you go in and you're bored because you know everything, go in and every day you learn something, and in today's age with so many gymnastics YouTube videos and things like that, there's always people on other sides of the world that are trying a new technique or a new something. So you're always in a learning phase. It's never boring. And it's something that keeps your mind active. And I love projects. I love building things, but my most favorite projects are building that student and that athlete kind of from the day they get in the gym until the day that they're, they move on to college usually. So it's really, I think, rewarding and you feel like you can really make an impact in a child's life. And so that's why I wake up every day and go, it's going to be a great day. I get to spend time with kids and we get an opportunity to, to mentor them or mold them as they go on to their careers or whatever they're going to do. So that's what keeps me involved in it. It's just the fact that you're always learning, you're always helping children, and there's no better way to spend your life. So that's kind of where I am.
All right, Miss Beckett, you're up.
Okay. So I obviously started out in my counseling career in crisis and trauma, and that's what I am still extremely passionate about. And I've worked in so many different areas when it comes to that and had so many jobs because I couldn't decide what area I wanted to work on. I think that was really hard for me because a lot of counselors, therapists, psychologists, they can kind of get like put into one box once you pick your population. And I didn't know what population I wanted to do. So I worked adults and children, and I worked in all the most extreme environments that I could. So like I loved working in the prison. I loved working in domestic violence shelters. Like I did all of it. And I worked in acute care, residential care, but that was specifically with children for those. And then, I got married and had a baby. And then I really couldn't do crisis and trauma anymore because where I was located in Florida, what I was doing was it was a long drive. And I wanted to be home with my kid. And then Ian kind of called me up and he's like, so what are you doing with your life? and I was like, right now, just watching a baby pretty much. So he kind of got me into it. And because I obviously did gymnastics growing up, and I coached with Ian when I was getting my graduate education. So it's not like it was a distant thing. I hadn't done gymnastics for a really long time. And I enjoyed all of that. But when I finally got into thinking about mental training and doing the research and how it's advanced with gymnastics specifically for mental performance, I was really interested in it because it's been kind of the same for a really long time in what we're doing. And I love challenges and trying to create new programs and trying to mix things up. So that was something that really sparked my interest. Plus, I love working with little kids. And if I could do it virtually, that was amazing because you can't work virtually in crisis and trauma. I mean, you can, but it's not, there's a lot of safety measures that have to go into it. And it just can be really difficult. So this is something that like I thought would be temporary. And I was like, oh, I'll help Ian out and we'll kind of work together on this stuff. And then he started creating these amazing gymnastics camps. And I love going because I love being able to be thrown into supportive coaching, especially on beam, watching coaches, and then applying my information and trying to figure out the best way to improve mental performance for gymnasts. And that's something that I'm constantly trying to do is seeing what can I improve in what areas, what hasn't been tried, are there different types of therapies that haven't been used, and how can I try to use them? And I guess that's kind of my goal, and that's kind of what keeps me going. Plus, the best part of what I do is that I actually get to see outcomes with these kids. Like when you work in crisis and trauma, a lot of my kids just disappear. Like my goal was always just to plant a seed to hopefully help them grow in some way, and knowing that I was never going to see the outcomes of my work. And that's kind of defeating when you go home. But with the kids now, I have kids sending me videos of skills that they're getting. And when they come to sessions, like they're so happy and excited to share what they've been working on with me. And I don't know, it's pretty amazing. So the fact that I get to do it in so many different areas now is pretty much the ideal job. I get to go to camps with you guys. I get to go to Ian's stuff. I get to work with kids individually. I get to work at gyms. It's awesome. So that's kind of how I fell into it and kind of decided to stay.
And it's probably not, too much unlike some crisis and trauma stuff. Certainly you deal with some gymnasts that have had some trauma and that affects their gymnastics. And then maybe you get some self-induced crises sometimes with gymnasts as well that are putting tons of pressure on themselves and that sort of thing. So obviously it's not the same as domestic violence, obviously, but I'm sure there's at least some similarities there that help you use that skill set that you've already honed in.
Yeah, I
for
think
sure.
the similarities are more of working in the prison. I think that's what it duplicates
That's
or replicates
exactly it.
the best.
Says the guy
Yes.
that owns a gym.
I feel like maybe we should
I have
go
bars
see what
on my windows, bars on the windows at the gym. So it's
Mike,
very
what's
similar.
happening?
Really similar.
You keep
That's
them in
how
the-
Mike
that-
has
that's
so
why they
many
get so good.
students.
That's how come it's so
They're just
successful.
forced to stay there.
Don't forget, Mr. Mike.
Yeah,
over
once
there.
we have men, they're locked in. They're
Let's
locked in.
not forget
They don't
Mr.
leave.
Mike over there. He
Not going anywhere.
created an Olympian.
That's right.
That's
Alex
true.
just had to
I
live at the
gym.
gym, and
Alex,
that's all you have to do.
Alex was chained to the gym. We're just
Mike,
kidding,
did you-
everybody out there.
Just JK, LOL.
But he did have an Olympian. We're not kidding about that one.
Oh, no, that's very true. Yes.
I think one
And
of the things.
speaking of, that's amazing. How was that experience going and doing that as a coach?
Well, it's extremely rewarding, obviously, when you're working with children and they excel to that level. And then it's, if you can even imagine when it's your own son or own daughter. But there are some obviously, coaching your son and daughter and wearing different hats, wearing the dad hat and wearing the coach's hat, and being able to separate those is sometimes difficult. And excuse me, I tell a lot of coaches when they're coaching their own child that what you need to do is really pick your battles, because there's some things that are important, that you instill on your child or your athlete, and then some that just aren't. And that goes kind of whether it's your child or not your child. You really have to, you know, um, example. Alex used to have crazy, crazy hair. It was really, really curly hair, and he liked to wear it long and just kind of bounced around in his eyes all the time. That's something that he wanted. And so if I mentioned it or talked about it, say, hey, let's get a haircut or something like that, he'd go, no, I'm not going to haircut it. This is style, it's my hair. And so, so you just, you realize that's really not important. If he falls off of the equipment and gets mad and cusses and hits the equipment or something like that, well, now you got to pick that battle and say, hey, no, that's not appropriate. We don't do that. You need to control your emotions, and you're not going to be a good gymnast if you can't control your emotions. And so picking your battles and really what's important is really difficult to do sometimes as a parent and a coach. But yeah, so that the experience and be able to take your athlete, especially your son and daughter, to an Olympic Games is just an experience that it's hard to describe. It's very emotional. You feel extremely blessed. And why aren't you in this position? You're standing there at the Olympic Games going, man, I can't even believe that we're here. And you look back at all the hard work that got you there, and you realize, why you're there, but it's a 1 in a million shot. So it's an extremely special situation. It's a special time in my life, and I'm sure for Alex also. So yeah, I will always cherish and remember those good times. It was amazing, and I'm just, like I say, blessed to have the opportunity to be able to do that.
Blessing, that we get to be in your presence, Mike, as an Olympic coach, and throughout my career, and especially with working and being one of the administrators up at Team USA Gymnastics camp. I got to really stand side by side with a bunch of Olympic coaches, kind of put that bug in my ear. I want an Olympian. And many of us coaches that have worked many, many years, and we've had some high level athletes and we've had some success. But, the realities of getting an Olympian, it's like Mike said, it's 1 in a million. Just surrounding yourself or getting the chance and opportunity to coach side by side. I think probably with 5 or 6 different Olympic coaches has, been a blessing for me to help me in my career. It never really gets out of the back of your mind, like, oh, it'd be really awesome to have an Olympian. But, as the years tick on, you think, well, there's 5 kids with an alternate every 4 years out of 50 states. Statistically speaking, if you're a gymnastics coach, you got a better shot at having your athletes run for president. But it's still a great goal, because somebody's got to make Olympians and somebody is going to get there, and it's an awesome thing. And you have that talent to get a kid there, and you have that talented kid to get there. That's an awesome thing. And I think back when I was wanting to compete gymnastics and my parents couldn't afford it, and I just did rec gymnastics with the town in an after school program, and that's what really kicked off my whole love for gymnastics. I can remember sitting there in front of the TV every time the Olympics would roll around, and all I wanted to do was watch gymnastics, like this close to the screen, and that never went away. And then I started coaching and some kids and started having some success, and kids got better, and I got better, the kids got better, and I learned some more, and you keep learning. And like I said, I just did a camp like 3 weekends in a row. I was down to Virginia, then to Atlanta, and then to Indianapolis, and I took away something new from each one of those camps that I never either saw before, never did before, or never thought about doing it that way. Those things are really every time I go to one of those camps, and like we're going to be going up to a Flip Fest for the NGA National Camp, and I guarantee I'm going to pick off something new from at least 3 or 4 different people. That's really what keeps me going every day. I can't wait to get in the gym and work on something with one of the athletes that I'm working with now. And when we get to camp up in Flip Fest, we get to work with other people's athletes, and somebody gets a new skill. It's like just so rewarding. I can't even put it into words of how rewarding it is in my heart. not in my pride or my ego, it's just fun. It's like to see something come to fruition that a kid is working so hard on and that you had a small part in that. But I always tell the kids all the time, gymnastics is nothing. It's not just another cartwheel, it's another flip, it's another full turn. It's what did gymnastics do for their life? It sets them up for success. Even kids that, maybe tap out at level 8, but they've been in your gym for 6 years. They've made a family for life. You've made an impact on a child's life. You've made an impact on that, maybe that family's life. And those kids will take that to wherever they do, whether it's gymnastics oriented or not. But it helps them with time management, discipline, patience. All of the things come to mind when I start to think about what gymnastics can and does do for all these children, including coaches.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, I'll have this kind of like out of body. This sounds weird, but kind of going like, hey, this is just a sport, right? And sometimes that's a good perspective to have, right? But I think the better perspective is what Rob just said, because I will have that perspective sometimes where I just go, hey, this is just a sport. Might be an expensive sport, or it might be a sport that involves a lot of time and effort and hardship and fight and all those sorts of things. And it would be easy to just say, well, why try that hard? Because, it's just a sport, right? Just a youth sport. But then when you put it in perspective, like what Rob just said, where it's, yes, maybe it's a sport, but the things that you get out of the sport are simply amazing. And I just had an athlete, she's 16 now, I think. And so she's, starting to look like, oh man, the end of my career is coming kind of thing, right? And she's like, man, it's kind of sad to think about like all this stuff I'm working so hard for that like maybe in 4 years I won't be able to do anymore. I was like, well, that is a perspective, but I kind of put it like what Rob said. I'm like, but gymnastics is teaching you way more than a giant, or way more than a back tuck or something like that. Now, I will say it's super fun to keep at least some of those skills to throw out at, a party or, whatever. But man, gymnastics does so much more than that.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. You get to keep some of the skills, and it's like most of us all can still flip. I watch Scott Barkley every year. He posts, his birthday, and he does like a back tuck off of P bars, or he does a full on trampoline. And Tony Gaiman used to do those things too. And he'd get on trampoline. I was 65 years old today, backflip for my birthday, and I used to do that too. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, what if I get hurt? And who's going to coach? You start to see like those want. I get the itch to flip every once in a while, and I'm like, and then like, oh, I got to get out of the pit. I'm not 80 pounds. Getting out of the pit is going to be in trouble. I don't want to go in. So things like that start to happen. I work side by side. Chris Regal, he was an Olympian in '88. He works here a few days a week, a few days a month, sometimes 4 or 5 days a month, and it's really great having him in here for the aspect of former Olympian, and he's also was a coach and the former gym owner. And I said one time to him, like, don't you ever get the urge to flip? And he's like, nope.
Nope.
Never.
He blew his wrist out on rings one year trying to make a comeback or something after the Olympics, and he wound up having surgery, and he said, I've never done a handstand since. And I'm like, wow.
Oh, wow.
Like,
holy moly.
Not even
yeah, that would be hard for me.
It's in perspective, like we still have that itch. We want to, we know we can, but we also get to that point. Like Ian's still flipping around and bouncing around on trampoline. I look at him like, oh my gosh, if I did a full, tramp, I'd like, break a hip.
Well,
yeah, the funny.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I said this. The funny thing is that Rob mentioned it before. He said he feels 18 in his mind. I think you go in your mind you can feel the skill of what it used to feel like. You think you could just jump up and do it until you actually jump up and you're like, oh no, this is not going to happen.
No, never mind.
That mind body connection is no longer there. Whatever muscle memory you had is just gone.
Yeah,
your brain is lying to you.
We look at Alex, like a couple of years ago, Alex was up at camp, and I think he did a double off of tumble track, and where he did like a drill for a full out. He was helping my athlete, he was trying to learn a full out on bars, and he got on trampoline and did the whole drill that like broke it all down on tramp, and then he whooped the full out off the tramp into the foam, and I'm like, he still got it.
yeah, it hangs in there for a while. Like I could swing parallel bars, until I hit 40, and then I'm like, nope, it's not working anymore. So, and it usually takes a good, smack on your shin or something like
Yeah,
that on the bars,
exactly.
and you're just like, okay, we're
All
done.
right. Why am I doing this?
Yeah, but to back it up, there's those, like you're saying, so many of your athletes, they can no longer do the skills anymore. Gymnastics is not like golf where you can play it your whole life. It's probably one of the hardest. It is in my mind, the hardest sport in the world. And so not being able to do it, but all the memories and all of the, as a mental education that you learn along the way, those things you use through your whole life. You may not use that backflip in your life anymore, but what it took you to learn that backflip, that's what you take with you all through your life. And you're able to, whether it be just hard work, dedication, whatever it happens to be, to learn that skill or to get that routine perfect the way you want it, whatever it is, that's what you take with you your whole life. And so you mirror that in whatever you decide to do in life, those aspects of that hard work, that dedication, that mental toughness, whatever it is, that's what you take out of the gym and you use your whole life. So even though you're not doing the backflip anymore, you're still using all those skills that you actually took you to learn the backflip. So it's
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I think that was like a great summary of what gymnastics does for you and a good point to wrap it up.
Absolutely. Well done,
Yeah.
Mr. Nador.
Yeah,
sure.
that was awesome, Mike. I
No.
think that this was just a great episode for people to finally kind of get to know us a little bit better, figure out why we do this, why we're so passionate about NGA and about teaching gymnastics and growing this amazing sport, because it is something that we can all learn from, not just our athletes, but us as coaches. Like, that's one of my favorite things about this sport, is being able to continuously learn. So if this resonated with you or made you think about anything that you've learned from gymnastics that you would like to share with us, please let us know. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with anyone who could benefit from this conversation. And until next time, stay happy, healthy, and high performing.
Stay tuned for our outtakes from camp.
Yes.
Yeah.